Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Virtual Couch. I am your host, Tony Overbay. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. And today's episode is truly a very special episode. Today, I'm interviewing Joshua Shea, who is a friend and the co-author of our book, He's a Porn Addict Now What? An Expert and a Former Addict Answer Your Questions. And it was during the writing of the book, which took quite a long time, no thanks to myself, that I got to know Josh pretty well. And while I don't think that we necessarily would have just struck up a friendship just naturally from bumping into each other on the street, but we've been working together now for quite a while, and we have developed a very strong friendship. I had Josh on my podcast early on, and he had written his first book, I believe, right after coming out of rehab. And then a few months later, he approached me about the He's a Porn Addict book project, and I am so glad he did, because you really get to know somebody in writing a book together. And the book ended up being a bestseller for quite a while in the sexual health and recovery category. And it's helped a lot of people. And he and I recently finished up a project for TikTok, one of their new series, which is based on the book, where we go into more depth about the questions. I highly recommend you check that out. But we meet roughly every week looking at potential projects. And then this past week, we traded messages on Wednesday night to see if we were on for the Thursday morning meeting. And Josh literally discovered that there was an active shooter still on the loose. And if you've heard about it, in Lewiston, Maine, who had already killed 18 people and wounded 13 others. And the site of the second group of killings was less than a mile from his house. So before we dive in, there's a few things I want to address that we are going to talk about, sensitive, complex topics, and they really have real and immediate ramifications for a lot of people, including Josh. Because I don't think anybody wakes up in the morning expecting to find themselves a mile away from the site of a mass murder, but that's what happened to Josh last week. And the experience he went through was terrifying and unreal and just honestly just downright surreal. So first and foremost, my heart, and I know Josh's does too, goes out to everybody who's been affected by this tragedy, because I know there will be people that know him that will hear about this interview that there have been a lot of things that have happened to them. And so for those who have, especially the ones that have lost loved ones, words can't capture the depth of the pain and the sorrow that these events can cause. And I want to make sure that we approach the subject matter with the empathy and compassion and respect that it deserves. But I also know that we all grieve differently, and there might be some things that we say that maybe somebody might say, well, I can't believe they said that, or why on earth would they think that? And Josh reached out to me because he was grappling with a ton of conflicting emotions. Because on one hand, he wants to process all of it, and on the other, he was thinking, who am I to even talk about this when I was this close, but I didn't lose anybody directly? And, that's a fair question, because it speaks to the complexity of human emotions and the unique ways that we all deal with stress and fear and trauma, because there really isn't a one-size-fits-all way to grieve or process experiences like this. So in today's episode, we're going to touch on a lot of things, including whether there is a right way to grieve and how we all cope differently based on all of our own unique life experiences, and then the challenges of living with uncertainty, because it's really, really uncomfortable. What do we do with our discomfort? And then there's judgment. Judgment comes easy, especially from the outside looking in. But before you go thinking, well, why did Josh say this? Or why didn't Tony ask that? Or I can't believe that he was smiling at this point, or they even chuckled at any point. I just would love to encourage you to pause and just kind of ask yourself, if that is the case, why are you quick to judge somebody else's experience or their reactions? And I'm saying that from a differentiated place, because it really is worth looking inward, because that reaction does say more about you than it does about the person that is expressing themselves, either Josh or myself. So whether we're talking about a national tragedy that makes the headlines or something that you listening to this are going through that nobody else knows about, it's really important to remember that you are responding the way you are because you're you, and you're the only version of you that's ever been on the face of the earth. And this is the first time you're going through life and these things are happening. So you respond and you react the way you do because you're you. So that's a good place to start. And that's how you're navigating life at this moment. So I think it's just important for everybody when they start to get overwhelmed and start to have so much uncertainty to really take a good old deep breath in through the nose, out through the mouth, not the other way around, because I don't want you hyperventilating. But this is a really unique opportunity to approach this conversation with the sensitivity it demands, but also with just the opportunity to observe and check out your own judgments. And what does that say about yourself? And I mean that in we all want to get better and do better. And this is a way to really check yourself in real time. So with that said, here's my chat with friend Josh Shea. Joshua Shea.
Hi.
How you doing?
It's been a week.
I know, and people just say, how are you doing? And it just reflexively came out of my mouth, but you've got a lot going on.
I remember when I was in my rehab for porn addiction, that there was one woman and I who were always up first, and we always said, "Hi, how are you?" in the morning. And we always made the joke that clearly we're not well, we're here.
Right.
And recognized how, "Hey, how are you doing?" is almost the same thing as, "Hi, I see you."
Yeah. Yeah. You
So
exist.
we switched to that. We switched to, "Hi, I see you."
Okay.
"Hi, I see you."
Well, hi, Josh. I see you and you do exist.
Yeah,
That's a fact, right?
yeah.
Okay.
And
So
that's
maybe,
that's what it means so much of the time. Yeah.
yeah.
I have never been in a situation like I've been in the last few days, and it is difficult to know how to navigate this exactly.
Well, if you don't mind, let me take you through the text because I thought it was really
Yeah,
fascinating and shockingly watch me even bring what my experience was, which is just
yeah.
talk about ego. But
Well,
you,
but that's I've been mentioning that to people on my TikToks or elsewhere, is that this is something that even when it's a million miles away, you have to process.
yeah,
And like we said just a minute ago before we started, is that hopefully this is your closest contact with a mass murder
I
in
hope,
history.
but which I'm sure
Yeah,
you would have thought that you would never be within a mile of the active shooter either.
no.
Okay.
Literally, the last text I wrote
Yeah.
before the if you remember at the beginning of October, which as we're filming this is like 3 weeks ago,
Yeah.
we had that nationwide test of the emergency
Oh,
broadcast
yeah.
system on our phones.
Yeah.
So I am sitting in my office working on whatever I was working on when all of a sudden that went off.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what the hell?
Yeah.
There is an active shooter. I can tell you exactly what it said. It said
Josh, while you're looking at that, I know you have dogs in the room, and it's funny because as you pulled up your phone, it made a
squeak,
squeaky sound,
squeak,
and I
squeak.
thought, wow,
Yeah,
Josh's
that's
phone is. I'm not
my
sure.
yeah. It's not a real phone. I
Okay,
chew it.
squeaking.
Helps
Okay.
helps my teething.
Okay.
Um, Emergency alert: an active shooter is located in Lewiston. Avoid the area and shelter in place immediately. Lewiston officials will follow up as the situation
Oh,
de-escalates.
what time was that?
So that was sometime around 7 p.m. I don't have that exactly.
Okay, so when you sent me the text and said, "Do you plan on meeting in the morning?" and I said, "Oh, sorry, I meant to tell you I'm not available," and then you said, "It's okay. We have an active shooter situation making national news here right now." I mean, so that was we were in it, and you and I
Yeah.
we wrote a book together a few years ago, and then we just did a TikTok series, and so we meet every Thursday morning at my 6 a.m., your 9 a.m. So Wednesday night we check in, and so I send that,
Mhm.
and just the irony there was I was about to record a podcast with my daughter, and I think she's coming on, and then you said we have an active shooter situation making national news, and I feel so insensitive because we joke a lot and I respond and I say,
We
dude,
joke a lot.
we
Yes.
do. So I say, dude, give it up already. It's not worth it. And then you send me a screenshot of the at least 16 dead and multiple shootings in Maine. And you said from CNN took place a mile from my house. And then I felt horrible and I just spill it on my daughter, who's very sensitive, that, oh my gosh, I just, said a really insensitive thing to my friend Josh, who is a mile from an active shooter. Admittedly, we're sitting ready to record. And then it's kind of like, does it really matter right now?
Well,
So
and that's
pick it up from
that's
there, Josh.
part of the things
Yeah.
that go through my head the last couple days is,
Oh,
does any of this matter? And is there a right way to mourn? And what happens next? My wife and I today, she often processes by watching true crime.
mm,
She processes by watching things like 6 Feet Under. Can't tell you how many times I've seen that series. Brilliant, but I've seen it too many times.
okay.
I feel like I've seen every Dateline and every 2020 that's ever been. And she was watching that this afternoon, and it dawned on me for the first time, I'm going to be watching. Oh, let me get rid of this. Before
Go get rid of your squeaky phone. So
okay.
Wednesday night, after I send that text and then exchange texts, and I'm now feeling bad and talking with
Yeah.
my daughter about it, and then you send the thing, and I say, "Okay, man, take care," and I'll be thinking about you. What happened? So you get the emergency broadcast system
We get
alert,
the
and then what
emergency
happens?
broadcast thing. Yeah. So my daughter, I don't know how she's plugged in or where, but she's one of those 24-year-olds who's plugged in.
Uh-huh.
So before the local media, they basically told us to, through social media, to turn off all our lights and get down.
Wow, Josh, what was that like?
Well, it was difficult for me because in a crisis situation like this, the great majority of crisis situations I've been a part of,
Uh huh.
And I've been a part of a lot because I worked in the news. I
Exactly.
worked in
Yeah,
the mainstream
exactly.
news for so long. It is run toward the problem.
Wow. Okay.
And not a matter of I'm going to go be a hero. It's run toward the problem, find out what's happening, and let people know. And I haven't been in an active newsroom in over 10 years, but that's what kicked in. 9/11, Oklahoma City, a bunch of elections.
Yeah.
We had a catastrophe of an ice storm here in 1998. Every major news event, for the most part, from 1995 to 2010, I was in a newsroom
Wow.
and I could put my emotions on hold. I was not a civilian here. I was part of the media and it was
Yeah.
my job to tell people what's happening. So I'm used to hoaxes. I'm used to
Oh,
things that aren't going to happen. The amount of times that I worked the police beat every Friday night for the reporter who was off that day.
okay.
And I would run to my car the moment we heard there's a structure fire over the scanner.
Uh-huh.
9 out of 10 times, this tells you how old this was. 9 out of 10 times, by the time I had got to the car, my beeper had gone off to get back inside. We had a code that said,
False
scanner
alarm.
traffic,
Okay.
yeah, kill it. Just kill it.
Wow.
Most of the time before I even made it to my car in the parking lot to go to the fire or go to whatever it was, well, call back. It was burnt toast.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
or something like. So I am programmed to believe nothing is really happening. So when my wife was conversing with my daughter, I was just going about doing my work, minimizing it, kind of like you were with the joke,
Yeah.
just whatever, whatever. She was like, "We've got to get down. We've got to get." I'm like, "What are you talking about? This isn't a
Wow.
big deal." So then, but my instincts kicked in, so I brought my laptop downstairs to where my wife and I were, and I called up scanner, the
Oh,
police scanner on the
I
internet.
wouldn't thought of that. Yeah.
And that's what, if you want to know what's happening in real time in a situation, go to the police and fire scanner because that is where the news is happening. You can look up your local police and
Wow.
scanner traffic and do that. So we went there and I could tell within a moment this was different.
Wow.
It reminded me a little bit of the time 15 years ago that there was some smoke drifting up my street. And my wife's, is that a bonfire? And I'd been at enough fires. I was like, no, this is major. Call 911
Uh-huh.
and ran outside because my neighbor's house was on fire.
Wow.
This was okay. This is major. This is nothing to laugh at.
Yeah.
This is a big deal. And that was right about the time that it started to hit the news media online. And
Okay.
I think I sent you a
Yeah.
screenshot of
So
that
from
as well.
CNN. And then at that point, was your daughter, were daughter and wife there at home?
Well, my daughter lives 30 miles north,
Gotcha. Okay.
so she was not in any danger.
Okay.
And I tried to, rationalize with my wife that, okay, we know he's gone to two public places.
Wow.
He's not targeting house.
But
What
what,
are the
yeah.
odds of him targeting our specific neighborhood?
Okay. Well, that's what I was
I,
curious
I
about because you showed me then the map the next morning, the circles of, and it was within a mile. I mean, so I assumed that, yeah.
The
Okay.
first shooting location, for those who aren't familiar, if
Yeah.
they're listening years from now, for those who aren't familiar, the first shooting location was about a mile from my parents' house where I grew up.
Okay.
It was at a bowling
Bowling alley.
alley.
Okay.
It was where my high school prom took place.
At the bowling
Uh,
alley.
yeah, there was an event center up
Okay.
top.
Okay. That
Um,
makes a little more sense. I was
Back in
making
the
jokes
day.
about
But
your high
but there were plenty of people in their prom dresses and suits bowling that night.
school.
That's the community. So that happened. We didn't hear about it until he was at the second location.
How long after
That
the first one was that? How long was it
It's
between?
4 miles away. So he was. I haven't heard anything about how long he was at either location yet,
Okay.
and I'm sure they know, and I could
Yeah.
probably do the math backwards. But he went from the first location where he killed and injured. I think he killed about 8 or 9 in each location and
Man.
injured another 10 in each location. It was pretty even. He got in his car after he left there. He drove 4 miles to a pool hall that is less than a mile from my house, and I showed you
Yeah.
the
On the
drawing. It's
map. Yeah.
0.7 miles from my house, and he killed just as many people there, and then left. And nothing when he hadn't shown up, and there were a few of those immediate false flags that pop up.
Okay.
Somebody said he had gone to the local Walmart distribution center because that was full of people and that was in the same neighborhood,
Oh,
or maybe he was heading here to this or here to that. But within an hour or two, it was pretty clear that there were not going to be any more killings, or it very much appeared that way.
yeah.
And so we turned on the television finally and started to watch both the local and the national media. And frankly, didn't really turn it off until this morning.
And you and I are talking Sunday evening your
We're
time.
talking Sunday evening here. So it's been 4 days since this happened. And
Were you able to sleep that first night, Josh? The Wednesday night?
I think I went to bed at 3 a.m. because I play the history, I play the
Okay.
statistics. In 90% of these situations,
Yeah.
the gunman kills themselves
Yeah.
shortly thereafter. So I assume that's what he did because Wednesday night, about 2.5 hours after the shootings happened, they discovered his car 10 miles east of here at a boat launch.
Okay.
I mean, while some people were saying, "Oh, he has a boat, he has a registered jet ski," I know this river. He's not boating on the river. He's not trying to get
Oh.
away on a jet ski because we have so many dams on this river. He
Mm.
wouldn't be able to get too far, even if that was his plan.
Okay.
I assumed that because he had guns, he had probably walked into the woods and shot himself, or walked into the water and shot himself.
Yeah.
He'd be found. So I was never really scared that he was going to come to my house, or he was going
Okay.
to we're going to find, because I know the area, I know the history of this. I've seen enough of these in my life that the fact that they didn't find the body for 2 days is actually a rarity. Usually the gunman is in the high school gym, or he's
Right.
just outside the movie theater, or he's either immediately gunned down or kills himself.
Hmm.
And the thing that was different here was we were in lockdown from Wednesday night through Friday late evening. And Friday around 5 p.m.
Wow.
locally, they said that the shelter in place order was lifted. And my wife said, "Do you think that's just because they think they're dealing with a dead body now?" And I said, "I think it's too soon. I think they must have found the body." And an hour and a half later, it came out that his body had been discovered about a mile from that boat ramp in a trailer at a
Yeah.
recycling center where
Yeah.
he had previously worked. So I don't know if he was trying to hide. I don't know why he went there, and who knows exactly how people
Yeah.
make their decisions and why when they have that happening. It's been
Oh.
very, very weird because especially Wednesday night and more Thursday, as the victims' names came out.
Hmm.
I was kind of in the back of my head, always waiting for that phone call,
Okay.
always waiting for that bad piece of news that someone I was very, very connected with was shot and killed.
Uh-huh.
Thankfully, that never came. I have a lot of acquaintances or friend of a friend situations that are much more direct to this. And it's weird because it's like I almost it's I don't say survivor guilt, but it's so
Right.
many more people around here are suffering so much deeper than I am tonight, that I
Hmm.
feel like I said, I feel like I'm processing this in a very self-centered way coming on here and talking to you. I feel like, who am I to shine a spotlight on myself? But I had another friend of mine who is a therapist say to me, "You are now from one of these places."
You said it's insane. I know this story, but I've never seen it starring locations I know and people I know. I remember around 9/11 when people talked about even me, where I used to travel to a certain place and fly a certain place. And my own brain wanted to say, man,
Right.
it could have been you, but it was so far off from that. But I mean, do you
I will
find
tell
yourself
you,
saying, I know those places and I know those things? And
20, 22 years since 9/11.
yeah.
Every time I am in, and I'm in Maine, obviously,
Mm,
anytime I'm near the Portland area, I see this one hotel, and I think that's where a couple of the 9/11 guys stayed,
yeah.
because a couple of the 9/11 guys flew out of Portland to Boston
Oh, I didn't
and
know
then
that.
went Boston to the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
And so there is a connection there. And because there's that connection, I still 22 years later think about it when I pass that hotel. Hey,
Okay.
that's where those guys stayed. And
Yeah.
as I was saying earlier, before my dog got loud, and hopefully it was edited out, I've never seen this show. I've never seen this national news thing. It's like 9/11 happened here, but for nobody else.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like the shelter in place order. Well, when COVID kept us all home, that was one thing, but now it's just here.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about today how a 33-year-old person, which is 15 years younger than I am, they remember 9/11. If they're from this community, they remember 9/11. They went through COVID, and now they went through this.
Mm.
That's a
Yeah.
lot of trauma to pack in 20 years. I've never had these kinds of, I mean, maybe the Challenger explosion,
Right.
or I don't even know of what I could say before 9/11 was the defining critical murder, death moment in my life. And now, some people in their early 30s have gone
At
through, who
all.
live here, have gone through three of these. And now I'm sure that much like the news channels did the 25th anniversary of the catastrophe of the ice storm,
Hmm.
it's not just going to be local channels who are memorializing this forever. It's you still see Sandy Hook, you still see
Yeah.
Columbine, you still see all of this stuff. And is Lewiston, because it was the worst mass murder in this year, because it's the worst mass murder in history in Maine,
Mm.
because it's the 10th worst in the US history. Does Lewiston now mean mass murder to
Right.
everybody?
Right. Okay.
If you graduated this year from Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado, you go to New York or Miami or Dallas for a job, and they see you graduated from Columbine this year, which you weren't even born when the shootings happened in 1999, I bet the first question they still ask is, "Oh, Columbine."
Yeah. Yeah. And did you know
And
anybody or
is that
yeah.
is that the
Yeah.
future? Is that the future for this place? And these are questions that can't be answered. And that's what I'm wrestling with now, is what is my identity of my town? What is the identity of this town? What happens when you are one of those places?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting
And
from a psychology standpoint, we have this concept called the relational frame. You put something in a frame with another and make those associations. And I was just watching the Boston Marathon documentary about the bombing, and
yeah.
and I thought of you with that too in hindsight, because they had the shelter in place while they were looking
Mhm.
for the last
Yeah.
shooter. And I thought about the
Yeah.
concept where you can see why they came back and wanted to be Boston strong, and we're running the marathon again, because I feel like they want to change that relational frame to be, okay, we make it through these things. And then it seems like maybe in other situations,
Right.
that
But
becomes the identity, right?
the only reason anybody would know anything about Lewiston, Maine, for the most part, is you're either a big Patrick Dempsey fan because he comes from here,
Okay.
you know Bates College because it's located here,
Uh-huh.
or you remember the fact that the Cassius Clay Sonny Liston rematch took place here. Whenever you see that famous photo of Muhammad Ali like lording over Sonny
Yeah, I know
Liston
that one.
looking down, that took place again less than a mile from my house.
I did not know that.
Um,
Okay.
that was 1965. That's
Oh,
what this community has still been famous for.
wow.
And that's damn near 60 years ago.
Mm.
And so now this community is going to be famous for this, probably. And then just a community of people who, like I said, I feel a little bit guilty that I put this in any terms of myself,
Yeah.
but there's now, within a 10-mile circle here, probably about 100,000 people who have just had this happen within 10
Yeah.
miles of their house, who most of us have been bowling there. Most
Yeah.
of us have been to the pool hall. Um, that's where my son and my wife used to play on Sunday afternoons.
Oh, wow.
Was at that pool hall. My dad, up until a few years ago, was in a like a Friday morning bowling league there.
Wow.
And you make these connections to it, but
Yeah.
even if he was still in a Friday bowling league, this wouldn't have affected him. So, am I reaching? Am I
Right.
trying to make this about me? How in the hell do you process this? I don't even know where to begin. I don't know
Well, it's
what
a
I should feel bad about, what I should just push down and say that's reality and radical
Yeah,
acceptance.
I was about to
And
say it is just kind of. I hate that phrase. It is what it is, but I also love it because from an acceptance standpoint, that just happened, and here's what I'm feeling. But then I've never been in that kind of a situation. But it's also interesting because, of course, I've told several people, "Hey, my friend Josh lived within a mile," and telling my family, and it wasn't from a like I'm wearing this like a badge of honor because I just felt like
yeah,
this. But it is the wild way we want connection with others, and we
yeah.
want to share maybe the experience and but you had also mentioned something in one of the texts we traded that I so appreciated, where you said, "Okay,
I
as
apologize for my
oh, your
dogs, but
dogs
they're
are
dogs.
they're being good
They're
dogs. They're
dogs.
good boys." But as a student of the mind, it's fascinating to see what's happening with others around me. And tell me about that. What were you seeing?
Well, I mean, it's. I think everybody is going through what I'm going through, whether
Yeah.
you know somebody or not. Is what do we do now?
Yep.
My last night we didn't want to eat. We didn't want to make food here, but we didn't really want to go out because we didn't know what we'd face.
Uh huh.
So I went and got some takeout sushi, and I thought every place would be packed and people itching to get out after a
Right.
couple days, but it was really empty out there. It was
Wow.
still really slow. And when I went and picked it up, walking into that place, it was kind of like walking into a funeral parlor. They
Wow.
still had the loud music, which I can't
Okay.
believe they did. They still
Yeah.
had the sports on the TV, but it was a quiet scene,
Yeah.
and that's what it really feels like it is right now. It's just a quiet scene of so what happens next. And
Exactly.
I've started for and I when I entered recovery 9.5 years ago, part of me stepping away from my life as a journalist was to not follow the news very much.
Oh.
So I have to admit I am probably not a great citizen of my town or a great citizen of my state or the country or the world with how little I know is going on.
Uh huh.
And that's been just to protect myself.
Yeah.
That's been to aid in my recovery. You can't ignore something like this, but I decided after the morning news conferences today that I'm going to pull back on this coverage quite a bit.
Well, and Josh, I
I'm
think
gonna
it speaks to like you say. I like what you're saying. Everybody's going through it there, but everybody has their own versions of whatever that is. And I look at how we get rid of our discomfort, and sometimes people get rid of it by ignoring things. Sometimes people they want a group experience. Sometimes people want to feel special. Sometimes people want to get
Yep.
angry about a cause. I mean, there's so many different ways to get rid of that discomfort.
Well, and there have been people I've seen on social media angered at how other people are
Oh yeah, yeah,
processing.
yeah,
And to me, it's like, okay, if a narcissist is going to make this about themselves.
yeah.
Somebody who is an empath and compassionate is going to make this about the lives of the people.
It may feel
Somebody
overwhelming.
who is
Yeah,
a gun advocate is going
yeah,
to make this another way. Someone who's a
yep,
mental health advocate
yep.
is going to make this another way. And it's funny, I noticed I didn't like watching the national channels because we're reporting from New York, and here is our mass murder expert from Texas,
Uh,
and here's our other person out in LA, and they're all talking. It's like none of you people have ever stepped foot here.
yeah, yeah.
We do not live in the rural utopia. You are quaint little Norman Rockwell town you were talking
Mm,
about.
yeah.
That's not where we are.
So at one point, when I was waiting for you to jump on today, I even pulled up CNN because I thought, I'm just going to read some of the other coverage that came in. And the first thing I click on, it's 15 people shot, and then I thought, oh wait, but that's not it. It was last night, 15 people shot at Halloween party in Chicago. So the crazy part is the way that things are going, and I like what you're saying about if somebody is, you can take an angle on this for anything. Somebody could say, well, at least people weren't killed at this one, or somebody, a gun advocate or a
Mm,
gun rights person, or I mean, it's just wherever you want to attach meaning. It's just
yeah,
crazy. Yeah.
absolutely. And I think that everywhere else this debate needs to be going on, whether it's gun control, whether it's mental health. This is a problem that's going to have to be solved by many moving parts.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we are afraid to tackle it because
Yeah.
it seems too big. It's too many moving parts. But that's not the debate that I feel like having right now. I worry that this is going to make people with mental health look even worse, especially locally. I worry that mental health will around here will now mean, oh, you're going to be that guy.
Right. Yeah.
There was an article locally that, boy, the gun shops have been doing great business since yesterday.
Wow. Okay. Hey,
So
well, and
it's
I
it's
feel like I think you would have said this in your text. I'm assuming you didn't know who the person was or anything like that. But I mean, I was reading the part about that just
yeah.
mental health. His mental health had declined rapidly. But then I even wondered, was that just something that someone is assuming, or if there's,
No,
or yeah,
he was, according to the news that's been reported, he was hospitalized for 2 weeks this past summer, 2023. He was hospitalized for 2 weeks in New York when he was at, I believe, a National Guard training.
oh wow,
That people said he was talking about shooting up his hometown National Guard location or wherever he normally trained.
yeah,
And they kept him, and I think this was New York. They
uh-huh.
kept him for observation for a couple weeks and then let him out.
Wow,
And Maine's gun laws are very pro hunter friendly, so they're very gun friendly.
uh,
Maine is a nice, quaint rural place that, ironically, last Monday was voted the safe or was named the safest state in the country by some
really?
organization. Yeah,
Okay,
it was like literally 3 days earlier.
oh, wow,
It's one of these things where it's thought on top of thought on top of
yeah,
thought on top of thought. Can we do anything about guns? Can we do about anything about mental health? Am I just thinking about this stuff on a national level because it's easier than focusing on what just happened here? I haven't been a real active part of my community for about 10 years.
yeah,
Since I got into recovery, I've pulled back a lot. So, do I even have the right to have
mm,
the deep sadness or deep pride if I'm not one of those people on the inside anymore when a tragedy like this happens? My son was in college in Ithaca, in New York, and I've been trying to keep up with him and make sure he's okay. Because what happens when you're 500 miles away from an
yeah,
instance like this?
yeah,
What goes through you? So I've been trying to keep in touch with him and make sure that he's okay. And he didn't know anybody,
okay,
and that everything is okay there. Make sure my wife is okay. That she's a much more of an empath than I could ever hope to be.
yeah,
And is she okay with what's happening? She's had a lot of trauma in her life lately. What is this going to do to her, if anything?
yeah,
I have recognized in the last few days, thankfully, I haven't wanted to drink once. I haven't wanted
mm,
to look at pornography once.
yeah,
So that's another big sign to me that all the healing and all the recovering worked.
yeah, yeah. The
I guess you could
foundation's
say.
set there pretty
Yeah,
strong.
so it worked. I'm glad, but it is something that is at the forefront of my mind. And I've tried to tell myself that Monday morning, my wife goes back to work, ironically at the hospital where they brought
Oh,
90% of the injured and dead. And I've got to keep going. I've got sessions to have with people. I have interviews to give about pornography addiction and betrayal trauma.
hmm,
I've got to keep going too. And how do I do that in tandem? In my old self would just push this down and forget
right,
about it.
right.
That's how the old me dealt with trauma.
Yeah.
But I'm not even sure at this point how much trauma I am allowing myself to have.
Well, and I think there's something there. Let me find my soapbox because if anybody has listened to and hung in there with us this far, you said earlier something I really appreciate, which is people always say, "What's the right way to grieve?" or "Is there a right way to grieve?" As a mental health professional, there isn't. You're grieving the way you're grieving, and I feel like people will say, "Shouldn't I be doing it this way more?" or "Is it bad that I didn't do it a certain way?" And I always start with the place of, "Well, you're just being who you are, and this is the first time you've ever been in this situation with all the things that lead up to this moment." So I think that's significant. But I appreciate what you're saying about how do you implement this into your what it feels like to be you as a person that helps people as a coach, And I had a daughter go through almost lost her life a couple of years ago in an accident. And all the things I had said that I felt so good about noticing thoughts and emotions and inviting them to come along with me while you engage in things that matter. And it sounds so good until you're somebody actually going through it. And then it
Right.
made me rethink a lot of things, but I did find it helped me be a little more empathetic, or it became part of my story of, not that I could ever imagine what other people are going through, but now I really understand that I don't understand what other people are going through. But then the more that I'm being open and real, that if somebody else now has a reaction that's negative toward that, well, it almost helps me understand who I can really connect with and who I can't. Because if somebody's saying, okay, enough about you right now. If I had just experienced something, then I thought, okay, well, this is somebody that isn't really very safe for me to talk to right now. And I think it's
Right.
so right. And I think it's so important also that as a therapist, a lot of times there's a lot of different ways to do therapy. And one of them is, if you just talk, and I'm saying this more for people listening, because I think you understand this as well as somebody who helps people. But the more that we talk about things and have somebody that is listening saying, oh man, tell me more, the less scary those things are. But if we keep them inside and our inside thoughts and voices, then they typically devolve into okay, I'm terrified.
Right.
What's wrong with me? I'm broken. I should be doing it this way. So I just think, if anything, if the more that people are able to express themselves, especially with people that are not going to say,
Right.
oh, why didn't you do this? Or I would have done this. Like those people, they can hit the bricks right now. But if somebody's
Yeah.
just going to listen, I think that'd be a big help.
Well, Thursday I canceled my sessions and
Okay.
I had one interview, and I told the people I can come on and try to do this, but the last 24 hours have been difficult. And they said, let's just put it off to the new year.
Yeah.
And in the sessions I have had the last 2 days, I've right up front said, I don't know if you've seen the news. Some
Mm,
of my clients have, some, don't follow the news at all. And I said, there's a major thing happened here. Luckily, I'm not close to any of the dead or injured that I know of yet. I think I would have gotten that call by now,
mm.
but this thing is ricocheting around in my mind.
That's a good way to put
And
it. Yeah.
I'm going to be here for you. I'm going to be present for you. This may even be good because it can
Right.
distract me
Yeah.
a little bit. I can focus on something else and somebody else.
Yeah.
Uh, but I just want you to know up front that, holy crap, I'm from one of those places now. When you say this can't happen here, and I
Yes.
know everybody listening is still saying this
Yeah.
can't happen here, it actually can. It
And that's
actually
when you
can.
texted
And
that, Josh. Oh, yeah.
if that can happen, and I can't tell you what it's like to be from one of those places because I don't know yet.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how do you move on. I don't know yet.
Yeah.
I don't know what I know or don't know right now. I mean, I've had a lot of crazy stuff happen in my life because I was a reporter. I've seen a lot of crazy stuff happen in my life.
Hmm.
Where I'm supposed to, more than the average person, I've probably seen my fair share of disasters and major news events and that. And this kind of trumps them all. And there
Yeah.
have been times where I've walked away from scenes of fires or other things like that and been a little bit shaken. Uh, but I've never experienced anything like this. And I know I'm repeating myself
It's
again and again,
okay.
and maybe this will be a fantastic, thing to watch for me in a year. Um, it's it's difficult. It's
Yeah.
difficult to accept that this is now going to be part of my journey.
Oh, Josh.
And again, narcissistic as
No,
hell,
no, no. Well,
but
egocentric. We'll call it that. That sounds better, right?
egocentric. Yeah, egocentric is that I have a hard enough time keeping my shit together without being from a mass murder site.
Yeah.
And when I travel, when I go anywhere, when I do anything, is that what this is going to be now? And I don't want to not stay here because it's not safe. It's incredibly safe
Right.
here. It's
Right.
incredibly safe here, but is this going to be the world's most depressing place to live now?
See, and it's so wild to I appreciate this because you can't prepare for it, you can't plan on it. And if somebody right
No,
now is, because I'm doing the whole thing about I can't even imagine, and luckily that probably won't happen here. But then
right?
people can take that either way, and then they can start to become, well, wait, I maybe it could, and now I'm going to be overly sensitive to all the different things around. And I'm going to start
Yeah,
to not go out as much, and so then I do go with that acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean apathy; it means taking it in without defense. So then if I accept the fact that it could happen, then I'm going to live my life. But then all of a sudden that could be really scary as well. So it is just such a mind trip here.
I had to say to my wife, I think I said it yesterday. The days have blended together. It's been like 12 hours awake, 12 hours asleep,
Mm.
or 14 hours awake, 10 hours of sleep, 14 hours awake. So it's hard to, I looked up at the date when we started and it's, oh my God, Halloween's in 2 days.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Halloween's in 2 days. Who knew?
Yeah.
And oh my God, what does that mean around here? Maybe everybody ignores it and just moves forward.
Right.
But
Or people
I
gonna not.
guarantee
Yeah.
you, if I turn on CNN or Fox News or any national news network, there's going to be a how did the people of central Maine
Yeah.
conduct Halloween just days after the tragedy?
Exactly. And then people will make
And
judgments on that of like, I can't believe they
yep,
did, or of course they
yep,
did,
yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to any parties. I don't have any kids who are trick or treating, so I don't have to make any decisions, and it doesn't have to mean anything to me per se. But yeah, what I just keep coming back to. So what's tomorrow going to be like?
Yeah.
So what's tomorrow going to be like? And maybe this is like losing a close family member. Maybe it's not. I don't. I
Mhm.
it has a feeling of watching the planes hit the trade center because I saw that second one on TV live after I
Mhm.
heard what was happening. Um, it has that sort of some of the elements of the COVID, of isolation, of lockdown. You know, there are now memorials going up, but this is 3, 4 days after this happened.
Mm.
When you talk about places like Uvalde in
Mhm.
Texas, which was the last one that was worse than this about a year and a half ago, the gunman, I don't remember if he killed himself or if the cops finally got him, but he was dead right after the incident.
Mhm.
The Columbine shooters dead right after the incident. This community was on lockdown for a few days.
Days. Few days.
That had to, I mean,
Oh,
my brother, I haven't asked him about this yet. My brother's got a 6-year-old son and a 3-year-old daughter.
that's the stuff I feel so bad for them of what they had to go for, but I
Yeah.
don't even know what they had to deal with or what that was like.
Schools, schools in this area were closed Thursday. Then it was like the rest of Maine was like, oh my God, they didn't catch him. Okay, school everywhere is closed
Oh,
Friday.
okay.
And then locally, there are, I believe that the town of Lewiston is not having school again. I haven't seen anything else,
Oh,
and I'm not digging.
yeah.
Um, but tomorrow's not going to be normal for a
No.
lot of people, and I don't I feel so much for those parents who have to explain that to their kids. I remember being a kid scared to death that there was going to be nuclear war
Yep.
between Russia and the US.
Same.
That's what I grew up scared of.
Same. Yeah.
And kids today, I don't think they even know what the Cold War means.
Yeah.
Um, but holy crap, 9/11, COVID. If you're from here, now this. It's been a surreal experience. And the feelings of mass disaster of 9/11 and the feelings of being trapped of COVID kind of came together and descended upon my town
Mhm.
for the rest of the world to watch for a couple days.
Yeah.
It will be on 2020 forever. There will be Dateline
Oh, there
specials.
will be entire
There are
yeah, the Netflix,
this
series,
is
there will be everything.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, in 20 years there's going to be the Netflix Lewiston series.
Yeah.
I will probably know people who are being fictionalized.
Yeah.
It's you I'm sure there are people, I think anybody who's a parent has probably thought to themselves, how do I make sure my kid doesn't become a serial
Mhm.
killer?
Mhm.
Did Jeffrey Dahmer's parents do something wrong? The show sure made it look like they
Yeah.
did, but did Jeffrey Dahmer's parents do something wrong, or is he just wired that way? Is my parenting going to contribute to something? Because I'm sure there are very good parents out there whose kids end up as murderers, whose kids end
Sure.
up doing horrible things, and they're left wondering about themselves. But it's more of a I never thought I would have to wonder. I
Yep.
never thought my kid would be like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is a little bit, I think, of how I feel with since I've been a kid watching, when school shootings were rare when you and I were
Yep.
kids, they still happened occasionally, to today, where it seems like there's two or three in the news every week, if not
Yeah,
every day,
for sure.
it's still one of those things where it's like, oh my God, that must suck for those people. Glad I'll never have to
And
find
you are now
out.
one of those people.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
And just to say that out loud, I'm now one of those people who was in a town that had a mass murder tragedy.
And I think too, Josh, anybody, there will be people listening right now, they're going to stick, they just made a quick judgment. Well, he just needs to, or he's making it, or whatever. That is something that nobody can imagine unless you are going through it. And I think that's
Right.
exactly what I'm hearing, is that that is something you never anticipated and you're there and it's still a trip.
And I'm sure for the parents and the siblings and the husbands and wives who lost people, they're not even thinking about this yet.
No, I can't
It'll
even imagine.
probably be a couple years before they can get to the point of this happened here,
Yeah.
because it's so much about their loved one right now.
Yeah.
I'm probably 96% further along processing than they are.
And I appreciate that, because I mean, we skipped over that at the beginning, but you've mentioned in your text, and I think we talked right up before we started recording that we know that this is just your experience. That's what we're talking about, and we've already
Yeah,
acknowledged that there are people that are dealing with. I can't even imagine having lost a loved
no.
one, because the for real
There was
survivor's
a
guilt, or the I should have told
yeah.
him not to go, or I should have, whatever those
Oh
things are.
yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. There was a father and son who were killed. There was
Oh
a husband and wife who were killed.
man.
Probably my closest connection to this is the city councilor who lost his son. When I was a city councilor, I sat directly next to him.
Mm.
Um, I know the guy's got a heart the size of Texas.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what any of them are going through. And do I send a card saying thinking of you, even though I haven't talked to the dude in 8 years?
Yeah.
Or do I just mind my own business because that's kind of like making it about myself? Is this another way for me to be connected to it? Is this another way for me to heal? Is this being selfish?
Mm.
Should I just shut up? Am I doing a disservice to my community? Am I looking like a bastard coming on here and trying to talk about this stuff with you? Part of me earlier today, when I was sitting and I was watching 2020, was like, maybe I should just talk to Tony with the camera off.
I know. I know. I thought about the same thing. We were even talking about that, where we were saying, okay, neither one of us wants to exploit anything, but then the mental health part in me and the person that you help people as well just says, okay, I kind of feel like just having the conversation and yeah, accepting the fact people are going to make their own judgments about it. I'll accept that, because I think it just shows that people are going to think so many things. And what you just said there, I think is so key of how people
Right.
process, where it's like, I don't even know,
Right.
am I doing it
And
right?
I
And
don't
it's like, I'm just doing it.
I don't want anybody to think that you were the one who, oh,
I
come
know.
on my show, talk about this. It was because a couple people who have known me along the way, whose shows and podcasts I've been on along the way, asked me to do an interview. And I never thought about that. But hey,
Right.
there's their connection to it.
I know, right? Yeah. And I
And
felt bad when you
and
said it. I was like,
that's
well, I do want to talk to you about it. And I think it would help, but I don't want to exploit anything either. But here we are.
right. And that's when I asked you, hey,
Yeah.
if I am going to talk about this, I am cut from the cloth, whether you think it's right, wrong, or don't have an opinion of, I need to share about this.
Yeah.
I need to run towards this. I need to let people know how I'm feeling. So maybe they feel that way.
Yep.
One of the greatest things, and I enjoy every aspect of educating and writing and talking about porn addiction and betrayal trauma with people. But what I really like is connecting on one. And I had this was fantastic. It was on Wednesday. It was actually my last client before this happened, was a African woman who was about 15 years younger than me.
Uh-huh.
And she heard me on a podcast and just wrote to me, can we do this one session? I was like, yes. And she showed up looking just
Mm.
like this. And we were talking and relating. And I'm like, oh, I saw that kind of same stuff. And I bet you did this. And when I first talk to people about their porn use, or the fact that they have a partner who is using porn, there's a lot of relatability there. And I just try to put them at ease and you're not alone. You're
Yeah.
not alone. And by the end of that call with that woman, she actually said to me, in her thick accent, she said to me, uh, I never thought a white man from America was going to help me with this.
Yeah.
But it's like, this is how different we are,
Yeah.
but we can come together on a place, on an issue. So maybe 3 years from now, there will be a horrible thing happening and someone will discover this
And they will hear this and
podcast.
they will think, okay, maybe I'm not crazy the way I'm processing things, because it sounds
Yeah,
like there really isn't a way to do it. No, I like that, because of that whole concept of differentiation. If something brings up an emotion for me and now I have an opportunity to self-confront that, it's like, it's not that person's fault. They're just doing and being. That's what we're doing. And it brings up something for somebody and they can make that observation and judge. That's well within their right. Or they can say, okay, I want to tell both of those guys that they are being dumb. How do I know that that's why? That's a me issue, because I don't even know either one of those guys.
right.
I've never been in a town where that happens. And then, so how on earth would I know? And maybe that's going to cultivate more empathy from somebody listening, because they really don't know what they don't know. You just don't. Yeah.
Absolutely. And in my mind, and you talk about people, writing. There are people who I haven't talked to in several years who have written me in the last few days. And
Mhm.
there are people I talked to last week who haven't said a damn word.
Well, and Josh, it's funny because
And
you and I,
I've got a word not to judge them. Like, oh, these
exactly.
people are nice. These
Yes.
people cared about me, and these people couldn't have cared at all. The reality is they probably don't know what to say.
Well, and
Many of them don't know if I know the dead because they haven't talked to me at all. They're
yeah.
probably waiting for me to reach out and say, hey, just want to let you know I'm okay.
Yeah.
For me, myself, that's fine too.
Because I got to tell you that when you responded back with that initial text, I know we talked about it earlier, but we've texted a bunch, and we've texted really funny things and silly
Oh, yeah.
things, and we've forgotten things, and we've remembered
And
things, and
we
we've been
text
late on
silly
things.
things that, taken out of
Oh,
context,
would be just,
people would look at us and
yeah.
say, oh
So
my God, time to cancel you two.
right. And then, but then the second that you responded, I felt so bad. And I know that you were not intending anything ill.
No.
And then the next 2 or 3 days, I noticed that even I wanted to wonder how he's doing, but probably he's probably feeling overwhelmed, or probably a lot of people are talking to him and I better not. And it is just funny how it brings that up, because it's the first time I've ever interacted with somebody that I've had that kind of a relationship with, that's been in a mile away situation from a mass shooting. So I didn't have the playbook either. Imagine that.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's
Yeah.
it. And your daughter
Yeah.
is connected to you, who's connected to me, who's connected to the town, and we start playing 6 degrees
Oh,
of
so
mass
crazy.
shooter
Yeah,
to see how close you can make yourself to it. But I think that's just part of human
it
nature,
is.
and I don't think that it's good. I don't think it's bad.
Yeah,
I
it just
put
kind of
no
is.
value judgment on it. It just kind of is. It's how, at least with the media we have these days, with the violence we have these days, I don't want to dismiss any of the other 500 plus shootings that happened,
Right.
but oh my God, we got the worst.
Yeah.
Like, just if you're going to have a mass shooting and you're going to pick a ping pong ball out of a bucket of 500 and you're going to pick
Wait,
number one, and that's 3.8 million square miles in the US, 3.2 million if you don't count Alaska. And I was within a mile of
it's
this.
crazy.
For a obsessive odds stats guy like me,
The odds aren't very good.
then I figure out okay, Josh, well, you are 1 in 7,300,000 this could happen to. Those are the odds,
Yeah.
because I almost need to quantify this.
Mm. The brain's trying
I
to make sense
almost
of it. That's adorable,
I
right?
almost need to quantify this with math,
Yeah.
because math isn't wavering. Math is math. Math is how we codify things we measure,
Mhm.
and it's non-emotional, and it doesn't get to the mental side of things. It is math, and that's part of what is I'm having trouble wrapping my arms around, is that, let's even say that it's a 1 in 3.8 million chance that you live within a mile of one of these places. And I know population density
Yeah.
and size and blah, 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 that's all different. But okay, if it's 1 in 3.8 million chance of this happening, that's a less chance than being in a plane crash.
Okay.
That's less chance than being hit by lightning. It's still lower chances to win the Powerball,
That's what I was going to ask. I was like, why
or
couldn't those odds go there? Okay.
yeah, to go into space or something like
Okay.
that. But there are a lot of massively bad things that are far more likely to happen to someone than to live close to a situation like this unfolding. And
Mm.
so, if it's so rare, should I be a total basket case? Am I
Right.
actually
Then
holding
are
it
you not
together
doing it
real
right?
well?
Yeah. Right. Right.
Yes, and that's, if people can walk away with anything from this, is that in seeing me in the thick of it is there is no playbook by
There
which to
you go.
process. And I think as long as you're not hurting anybody,
Mm.
there's no right or wrong way to do it. And I have to let this happen. And I'm sure the shock will dissipate. It has with other events. I'm sure that the pain will dissipate. It has with other events. Will the proximity be a big thing for me? I don't know because I still think of 9/11. Like I
Mhm.
said earlier in the podcast, when I drive by where a couple of the 9/11 guys stayed in Portland, I think about that every time. Still get in the car and see masks on my floor and stuff. It's like, oh, I remember those days a year and a half
Yeah.
ago, which probably speaks to me needing to clean my car.
Probably a good
Um,
idea.
but is this just another one of these? Is this something that I'm going to be okay in a week? Like I was during 9/11, like I kind of was during COVID. Like when tragedy strikes, I usually pull it together pretty fast.
It's interesting. Okay,
Um,
I keep saying, okay, I'm going to say something very profound, and we'll wrap it up, and I'll give it like a very intense nod, the way that they do on the national news when they say this, Joshua Shea. But then when you just said it that way too. So I work with people that are often coming in saying, my friend said I never processed fill in the blank. My parents' death, my spouse is this, my whatever, and then they'll say, so do you think I need to? And I love that because it's like, well, how do you feel about it? Well, I just kind of feel it just happened, or it is, or I've moved on, or so then I think the answer is there because I can help you pull some nuggets out of there. But is that more of a me issue as the therapist? Like, let me get you to
right,
come up with some things that you haven't thought about. And then is that of benefit, or is that just now you feel like, okay, I guess I did it, so I'll check the box. And I have a strong belief that that becomes more about the therapist or the psychology of the peanut gallery, or people telling you, you seem okay. So that must mean you must be burying things, says the
right,
person that doesn't know what it's like to be you. So then you go to the
right.
therapist and say, somebody told me that I guess I'm probably burying things. So can you help me? And then if the therapist is more egotistical, then they're saying, oh, I can do that because I would like the
Yeah,
validation that I was able to pull the things out that you weren't aware of, that your friend told you about. And you're going to see where it just
yeah,
starts to be a big mess. And I love starting from a place of, it just kind of is, check this out. This is how I'm thinking, I'm feeling.
yeah,
That is the thing. So,
yeah.
but
And
if you
that's
can't sleep and you're crippled with anxiety and now you don't want to go out of the house, then maybe we need to talk.
yeah. No, I that's the thing. I'm somebody who sleeps about 6 hours a night
Uh-huh.
tops.
Yeah.
Up from 4 of 20 years ago,
Yeah.
but the last several nights it's been 10-hour sleeps.
I know. Maybe
Uh,
anybody listening right then just judged it. Either that's too much or that's too little. He should be
yeah,
doing it more, or he
it's
should be doing it less. Did you?
right, exactly. Is
Yeah.
is is this because I'm mentally exhausted, or is this because I have an excuse
Right.
to stay in bed? That oh my god, this bad thing happened, so I'm going to stay in bed.
Yeah.
Or am I mentally exhausted? What?
And then look at that right there. After I give this big speech, I want to say, I think it's B, Josh. I think you're mentally exhausted, says the guy that's never been through it as you. You've got plenty
Right.
of plants around you. You got tons of carbon monoxide
Yeah.
or dioxide going on there. So you should be okay. So
Oxygen is coming
oxygen.
out
Yes,
from the
yes, yes,
plant,
yes.
not carbon monoxide.
Carbon monoxide. Yeah. Oh, really? You're not aware
Yes.
of that, Josh? So you need to
Yes.
see, I could
This is
gaslight
this
you
is
there
why so
too.
many
Yeah.
florists are found dead the next morning.
Okay. You know what? There we go.
Uh,
Let's end with that humor.
yeah.
How about
Yeah.
that?
Okay. Good. Yeah.
Okay. See, and I knew the whole
Thank
time when
you.
I was doing that it was about carbon monoxide. And
Yeah,
yeah.
thank you. Thank you for allowing me to do this. The
Oh,
I think, and again, judge me as you will, and people have forever, and thankfully I have a bit of a thick skin now. But for me to move forward, I think that in the boxes I had to check, one of them was publicly sharing my story.
okay, I
And
appreciate it.
of course, I hope a million people listen to this. I hope a million people become interested in us and want to
Yeah.
buy the book and want to learn more about what this kind of the stuff and the projects that you and I have worked on together. But really, it's just that I think that I needed to talk to somebody and I needed it to be in something of a public forum,
Yeah.
whatever that means, because I've been the guy who tells stories my whole life.
Yeah.
I've been the guy who tells stories my whole life. And when something like this happens, I fall back on what I know, and that's telling a story.
Hey, look at me. I can end your deep thoughts by making it about me, shockingly
Okay.
enough. But this,
Wow.
but okay, but this speaks to, and I've
Tell
told you,
me, guy who hosts the Narcissist podcast.
that's right. I'll probably
wrap,
run
this,
it as a
wrap,
bonus
this,
episode.
wrap this tragedy up for me.
Right. Well, how you feel is, no, I don't know if you remember. One of the things that has endeared me to you, Josh, is when we were working on the book together And I was a tad bit late with the manuscript. And there were times where I just wasn't able to do it for various reasons. And some of it was my own, sometimes challenges or doubt. And I would feel like I had to make these excuses. And I remember this so well. You were just so good about, hey, we're both adults. You're allowed to feel the way you are. And I just remember feeling like, whoa, at that point, I don't know, late 40s adult human being, mental health professional. And I just felt like you really understood that people are going through their own things the way they're going through them. And it was because of that there would be times where you would say, I know we would go to meet and you're saying, hey, I don't know, I got up to, or I stayed up too late, can't pull it off today. And I would say, totally forgot. And I never once felt like you were judging, or if you were doing it probably with some fun. And I had that same feeling of, okay, well, you aren't trying to hurt me or anything. So if you couldn't make it, you couldn't make it. So I've appreciated that about, I hope that people will give you that same courtesy of just, you're doing and being the way you are. And so expressing this is just because that's what you do. And I really appreciate that.
Thank God my writing partner has a podcast that we can exploit me on. That's
Right.
part of my healing.
Well, yeah. Well, but I really mean that part, because it's like
No, I know, I know,
right.
I know
Yeah.
you do, and
We're
you
using our
know,
secondary emotions of humor because it gets
right,
uncomfortable when
exactly.
we're
And I
trying
was
to be
saying that to
real.
I was saying that to my wife yesterday, that we're both making jokes, that because that's how
Yeah.
we sometimes communicate during things like this.
Yeah.
And
Okay. Well,
like
this
we've said again and again, no right, no wrong, just
just
is.
is. I know this is one of the first times that I want to say, okay, I'm going to let you go because I want to edit this thing, and I really do want to get it shared because I think it's really powerful.
That's
So
timely. Yeah.
yeah. All right,
No,
Joshua Shea. Will I see you Thursday then? I don't know. I'll text you Wednesday night.
that's probably a good call.
Okay. All right. Hey, hang on here
All
for a
right.
second. I'll hit stop. All right.
Okay.